Welcome to Money RX for CRNAs and nurse practitioners. I'm Brett Fellows, certified financial planner. Almost every nurse who sits down with me, maybe just a few years out from retirement, ends up asking me the same question. Brett, what is my number and am I there yet? Now, they've seen, of course, the tools that we use to show them what their number is. They can see the 94% probability of success score, and yet they're still sitting in their next shift at the hospital. Because to them, their account balance just feels like it should be higher, and yet the number keeps moving. So here's what I always tell them. The balance is not what's important. The right age to retire is not going to be some number on your statement. It is, however, the year in which 5 planning windows will line up for you at the exact same time. And for a nurse with most of her money locked up in a pre-tax 403b, retiring 1 year too late can very quietly start to close those windows and then actually cost her more money than what she would make if she worked another whole year. So for today, I want to show you what those 5 windows are. I want to show you why there's no calculator that can see them. And I want to show you how to work your retirement age backward from those windows instead of just waiting for a number for you to feel safe enough. But before I hop in, I wanted to make sure that you knew. My firm, Oak Capital Advisors, is currently accepting new clients for our July onboarding. So if you are a CRNA or a nurse practitioner looking for a financial plan that is built around your income and the accounts that you have, and more importantly, your timeline, well, you can schedule a free introductory call by using the link in the show notes or directly at connectwithbrett.com. Now, for those of you longtime listeners, you know how I like to walk you through a household that I work with. Now, I've definitely changed their names, but the numbers are real. So for today, let me introduce you to Cynthia. She's 58 and she has been working as a CRNA for 28 years. And she is currently making $224,000 a year as a CRNA. Her 403b account balance is roughly at $2 million. She has a Roth IRA with $110,000, and she also has $120,000 in a brokerage account, and lastly, $60,000 in cash. Her husband is Raymond. Raymond is 60. He worked for the University of South Carolina, and he has already retired. He retired early, and he took a $2,200 a month pension for life. And they live a relatively simple life. They need $10,000 a month or $120,000 a year after tax to live what they consider normally. Now, Cynthia is definitely the driver in this relationship, especially when it comes to money. And at our introductory meeting, she came in with a pretty specific question. She said that her existing investment advisor ran some numbers for her, and it told her that she had enough money to retire 2 years ago. So then why? Why does it still feel like I should work 1 more year? And if I do decide to stop, Brett, what age is actually right? Is it 60? Is it 62? Is it 63? So Cynthia came in, she thought she was asking me for a date to give her, but she was really asking which year would let her use her windows that she didn't even know were open. So Cynthia's investment advisor answered a question 100%, but it was the wrong question because Cynthia had 3 different tools telling her that she could retire. First off, there's the proverbial 4% rule. $120,000 a year of spending against 2.3 million of investable assets was a drawdown rate of just over 5%. Now, to her, that felt a little high, which is part of why she thinks that she needs to keep working. But remember, Raymond has a pension, and we can turn Social Security on for him in 2 more years. So really, when you add those into the equation just 2 years down the road, that would drop the real portfolio draw to something closer to 3.5%. Now, Cynthia and Raymond also had a net worth target that her investment advisor had given her, and he'd run different Monte Carlo scenario analysis for them that came back at a 94% probability of success. So all 3 of these things answered the same thing for Cynthia. The money will last. But none of them said one word about which age would let them keep more of the money that they already saved. And that's not a flaw in Cynthia's math. That's a flaw in what the tools were built to measure. So the 4% rule and the Monte Carlo success score, well, guess what? Those just measure a portfolio's survival, but they are completely silent on the tax structure of a retirement portfolio's drawdown, on whether Cynthia can get subsidized health insurance before Medicare, or on how much pre-tax money that they can move to Roth before age 73. Oh, and whether Social Security is set up to protect the survivor, which is exactly the topic I spoke about in last week's episode. So be sure to listen to that if you haven't. But let's talk about this 4% rule for a minute. That percentage is actually being contested right now, and there are a lot of differing opinions about it. Morningstar says a 3.9% drawdown gives a 90% success rate given the current valuations in the markets. Now, William Bengen, who built the original rule, says historically that a 4.7% rate never failed. So this type of disagreement is actually a tell. A single number was never the right test. What I mean by that, you could have 2 nurses with the same $2.3 million, and you can give them both the same 94% success rate, and they can retire in the same year and yet end up hundreds of thousands of dollars apart in lifetime tax. So any score can't see the difference in tax because it's not measuring it. So Cynthia was using the rising balance in her 403B as her readiness signal. And every year that she stayed working, well, that number grew. And therefore, the signal said, this is getting stronger. And she read it as getting safer, which inherently makes sense. I totally get it. But what was actually happening is that she was drifting past the years that would have made the balance go the furthest. So the number on her screen was green, yes, but the timing was actually turning red the longer she waited. Because the thing that the number cannot see is that her retirement date isn't one decision. It is the switch that turns 5 other things on and off. Those 5 windows that I mentioned in the beginning. It turns those 5 windows on and off at once. So the day that Cynthia stops working, flips those 5 windows open or shut. So let's dive into them. Now the first window is the ACA bridge. Now this has to do with medical insurance. Obviously, from the day Cynthia leaves work until she turns age 65, Her health insurance comes from the marketplace. And the premium, it is not tied to her health and age. It is tied to her income. And in 2026, what were the enhanced subsidies from the past few years that helped pay for medical insurance are now gone. And there is now a cliff, which is at 400% of the federal poverty level. So it's not very high. What that means is this: for a household of 2 people, that cliff is at $84,600. So if you can keep your income under that amount, the benchmark medical insurance is capped at roughly 10% of income. But if you go just $1 over that $84,600, what I call the cliff, and now your subsidy for medical insurance is 0, and you are subject to drastically higher premiums. Window number 2 are the gap years. Now, you've heard me talk about this window a lot. So from your final paycheck until age 73, or whenever required minimum distributions begin. Again, RMDs are the forced withdrawal from pre-tax retirement accounts. So from your final paycheck until age 73, Cynthia is in the lowest income stretch of her life during that window. So that's when she can move money from her pre-tax 403b into Roth. And yes, she will pay tax on that, but she'll pay tax at 12%, 22%, maybe 24%, instead of just letting it continue to grow and then come out forced and stacked on higher tax brackets at age 73 or later. So if you retire at age 60, that window for you is in theory 13 years long. If you retire at age 66, and naturally it's only 7 years long. Which brings me to our third window, Social Security. So again, stopping work from that date and turning on Social Security, well, those are 2 very separate decisions made on 2 very different days. And the gap of time in between them is what will create those low income years for you. So back to Cynthia. If she retires at 60, let's say she doesn't turn on Social Security until 70. Well, that's a 10-year stretch of near 0 earned income. So in that 10-year stretch, that's cheap Roth conversions and possible ACA medical insurance subsidies. And by delaying Social Security to age 73, that locks in 124% of her full retirement age benefit, which protects whichever of them survives the other. Because remember, if a spouse dies, the surviving spouse gets the higher of their 2 Social Security benefits. Window 4 is what we call the fragile decade. And with this, I'm referring to stock market risk. So the 5 years before and the 5 years after retirement date are when a market drop does the most damage to your portfolio. Because if you think about it, in this window, your portfolio in essence is at its peak. And if withdrawals have just started, if you are now selling stocks in a couple of bad first years, well, this locks in losses that you will never get back. So the retirement date puts you in the middle of that fragile decade on purpose. And so knowing where it lands lets you build a buffer for it in advance. Make sense? And so then we have window number 5, RMDs most likely at age 73. So by this point, whatever pre-tax money that hasn't been moved or spent by age 73 Well, that now gets force distributed by the government's plan. And you do that on top of 2 Social Security checks and Raymond's pension. So Cynthia and Raymond will most likely be at a higher tax rate after age 73 than they would have paid back in their gap years. Now, believe me, this is becoming more and more common. A large pre-tax account balance. You may very well pay more in taxes in retirement than while you were working. So none of these 5 windows will ever show up for you on a calculator because none of them are about whether money lasts. They're about what the money costs to use and when. So for Cynthia and Raymond, when Cynthia's retirement date moves, all 5 of those windows move with it. If at age 60, well then Cynthia has a 13-year conversion runway for Roth. She has a 5-year bridge for subsidized medical insurance, and she can delay Social Security for 10 years until age 70. But if Cynthia waits until age 66 to retire, the bridge is gone. And the runway for conversions is cut to 7 years now. And half of those years are inside Medicare's 2-year income lookback, which is called IRMA, and a surcharge added to their Medicare premiums. So if they're doing Roth conversions now, that also raises her Medicare premiums. And so therefore it's hard to now justify even doing Roth conversions. So same nurse, same account balance, but the date of retirement decided everything for her. The number couldn't see it. So Cynthia earns $225,000. Every year that she stays working adds a big visible number to her bank account balance. Absolutely. But that's exactly why one more year is so hard to refuse. Walking away from a $250,000 salary kind of feels reckless, even when the plan already works. So one more year naturally feels like you're buying safety. But remember, the cost of that safety is invisible to you. It will not show up for you as a bill. It will show up for you as a window of time that quietly closes. Nobody is going to hand Cynthia an invoice for the Roth conversion year she doesn't use, or the healthcare subsidy she doesn't get to claim. So the financial cost is exactly what the psychology hides. Let's look at Cynthia and Raymond's household side by side. So on the one side, we've got Cynthia retiring at age 60, and they have 13 gap years, a 5-year ACA bridge, and can delay Social Security to 70. And they can also move roughly 1 to 1.5 million of her pre-tax 403b to Roth at a blended tax rate in the low 20s before any required minimum distributions ever start. On the other side, if Cynthia keeps working until age 66, well, now they only have a 7-year runway that is partly throttled by the IRMA lookback for Medicare. They now have a bigger 403b pre-tax balance that is going to get walloped by taxes during required minimum distributions at age 73. Because again, on top of that income, they also have 2 Social Security checks, which are 85% taxable. They have pension income that's 100% taxable. And now they have far less money moved into a Roth at a higher cost. So the difference in lifetime federal tax plus the ACA medical insurance subsidies that they would forfeit, plus the value of the money that they never moved to tax-free in Roth, lands somewhere between $300,000 and $500,000 for the household. And those 6 extra years of salary added to that balance, and they also closed the windows that would have made the balance go further. So there were 3 problems: a number that answered the wrong question, a date that silently controls 5 windows, and an instinct that tells you to work for 1 more year, but actually pays for that safety by closing out the very windows that create it. So they may look like 3 separate mistakes, but they are actually just the same one made 3 different ways. In no way does Cynthia need a higher account balance or a greener success score. She needs to stop measuring her readiness by her account balance. And she needs to start measuring it by the windows. Because the question isn't, is the number big enough yet? The question is, which year lines up the most windows that I can actually use? So naturally, my feedback to Cynthia wasn't finding a bigger number. It was flipping the whole question around and working the age backwards from the windows instead of towards some unknown target. Because when the right age is decided by an arbitrary number, one of 2 things will happen. You either wait until your account balance feels safe, which usually means working straight through those open windows, or you pick some arbitrary age off of a list for someone else's reasons. And the most common are, well, 62 because that's when Social Security starts, or 65 because that's Medicare. And you just land on a date that was never built for your situation. There is a different way to find the date that you should retire. And this is your takeaway from today. You want to start from the windows. You decide how long of a Roth conversion runway that your household wants. You want to decide whether you need to even use the ACA marketplace for insurance and for how many years. And you need to decide when the higher earner should claim Social Security to protect the survivor spouse. Once you've done those, count backward. So the age isn't something you wait to arrive at. It is the answer that falls out once you've decided which windows to use. Now, for most high-earning nurses with a pre-tax heavy retirement account balance, guess what? That answer will come out earlier than any calculator will show you, and it's worth a lot more. And it's worth more because there are 4 variables where the windows sit for you. Number 1 is the years from when you stop working to your RMD age. And for most of us, that will be age 73. This is your Roth conversion runway. The earlier you stop, the longer the runway. Second are the years from when you stop working to Medicare at age 65. This sets your ACA bridge length for medical insurance and how many years you can target a subsidy. Third, the pre-tax balance of your retirement as well as your spending need. If you add these 2 together, this will determine how much room you have to convert each year to Roth. And ideally, you want to do this without spilling into the next tax bracket or over the ACA cliff, which was pricing your medical insurance. And fourth is that survivor's picture. Which spouse's Social Security protects the one that's left behind? And therefore, who should try to delay the benefit, ideally to age 70? And I call the method that uses those 4 variables together the window map. It works the retirement age backward from the 5 windows. So the day you pick to retire is the one that opens the most leverage for you all at once. So your first move is to always map the windows before you pick a retirement age. Write down 4 dates: the year you turn 65, the year you turn 73, the year the higher earners' Social Security should switch on to protect the survivor, and the space between your stop work date and age 73. This is your Roth conversion runway. And then the space between your stop work date and age 65. This is the ACA bridge for medical insurance. If you do this, now you can see the windows before you commit to a year. And then your next move is to pick the age that opens up the most windows for you. So for Cynthia, retiring at 60 opened up a 13-year runway and a 5-year bridge, and lets her delay Social Security until age 70. Only after these windows are chosen does the math come back into play. Things like the 4% withdrawal rate, or a buffer of money for the fragile decade, which means a cash and bond reserve, so that you never have to sell stocks into a bad first year. Now you can sequence those windows so they don't fight each other. Because if you think about it, the ACA bridge wants low income. A large Roth conversion wants to fill the tax bracket. Well, they'll collide if you try to do both very heavily in the same year. So you want to stage them. Ideally, keep income under that ACA cliff during your bridge years when you want the subsidy. Then you can load the larger Roth conversions later into the years you're willing to forgo the subsidy or after age 65. And then you also have to ease off on Roth conversions as the IRMA look back approaches. So I hope you can see from all of this, the window map is like a calendar. It's in no means a single move. And this is where it connects the Roth conversion calendar that I spoke about a few episodes back. So the window map sets the years, and then the Roth conversion calendar is what you do with them. So Cynthia can retire at 60. Not 64 like her comfort zone is feeling, not 66 like the one more year instinct wants her to do. She delays her Social Security to 70, and therefore Raymond can claim at his optimal age because her delayed benefit, which is the larger of the two, protects whichever of them lives longer. And remember, across that 13-year runway, she moves roughly $1 million to $1.5 million out of the 403B and into Roth, filling the low 20% tax brackets and staying under the ACA cliff in the years she buys medical insurance. So by her age 73, her pre-tax account balance is now a fraction of what it would have been, and therefore her required minimum distributions now are much smaller, and they by no means shove her into the 32% tax bracket on top of Social Security had she done nothing. So the lifetime difference for Cynthia versus working to age 66 lands in the $300,000 to $500,000 range. Oh, and by the way, she got 4 extra years of her life back. So the number in her account balance did not change, but the age she chose to work backward from the windows changed everything. Here's what I want you to take from this. Your retirement date is a switch for the 5 windows: the ACA bridge, the Roth conversion runway, when to claim Social Security, the fragile decade, and RMDs starting at age 73. Work that age backward from those 5 windows. And for a high-earning nurse with most of her savings in a pre-tax 403b, the right age to retire almost always comes out earlier and is worth far more. If you're a CRNA or nurse practitioner and you want to see what your own window map looks like with your account balances and your timeline, head to the link in the show notes or connectwithbrett.com and schedule a free introductory call. That's connectwithbrett.com. We work specifically with nurses, and we'd be glad to walk through it with you. I'm Brett Fellows. Take care of yourself and take care of your money.
This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It should not be relied upon as a basis for investment decisions. This podcast does not engage in rendering legal, financial, or other professional services.